So for my first coaching video, I was looking at what could I really talk about that would set the stage. I know that I'll probably do many more videos, but what could be the first thing that I create around coaching, especially specifically abundance coaching? And one of the biggest things that came to me was fear of failure. How we often put our concerns about failing into the future to stop us from actually achieving what we want. So I have a really great example. I'm going to be working around an interesting concept called the singing bowl. And the singing bowl is something that you use to relax. Around the end of 2010, 2011, I started selling singing bowls, and I noticed that there was a very set group of things that happened that when people would play singing bowls that really show all the different areas where failure shows up. The first problem that I always saw was when someone already knew everything they needed to know, and I was showing them something for the first time, but they had maybe seen it before, maybe they had had a friend who had one, or they had seen it in action, and they would quite often, by knowing everything already, stop themselves from really listening or really trying to see how it worked. And quite frequently, they would play it the wrong way, they would hold the stick in the wrong way, or they would just take the wrong steps, or they just dismissed it completely as something they'd never seen or heard about before. So when you're looking at what is it that's in my way to get to achieve my goals, sometimes there's a discovery that's needed just before you start to really be like, yes, I know what I'm doing, but what if I came from this from a point of view of, I don't really know, let's find out. Let's ask questions or listen to what others, especially experts. I think especially nowadays where we're really questioning a lot of the fake news and lots of other things where people are just saying things. This is why right now we have people who are scientists who've studied for many, many years and are dismissed on a whim, like flat earthers, anti-vaxxers, and people who are literally just considering all the information that's like this much and then going, well, this little bit of information that I've just heard from someone else or online or something like that, that is enough for me to question everything that I think and not compare and go, oh, wow, I agree with this. I don't necessarily need to read all of that. So a lot of the time, a lot of things that stop us come from knowing already everything, or by just knowing one thing, we don't need to know the rest. We don't need to fact check. We don't need to go in and look. And it often will be the thing that really stops us because we don't necessarily go looking for the answer once we already have it. One more thing I forgot around learning more, like being open to learning something new. There is a difference between taking advice from certain people and other people. So for example, I had a conversation with my mother about this where I was starting a business and she gave me some really great financial sound advice. Don't do this, it's too risky. But then I would talk to people who had their own businesses and they're like, oh yeah, that just make sure you mitigate the risk. You put things in place to avoid that risk. Now, I love my mother, and of course you listen to everyone around you, right? But one of the things that's really important is to qualify why they're giving you that advice, what do they already know, and why is that important? So when you're looking at all these different things, this is why I argue about flat earth and anti-vaxxers. They're getting information and they're doing a lot of research. They're not stupid people. There's a lot of information out there and they're getting into it. But what they're doing is they're looking at certain people and qualifying, yes, you're a smart person, you know what you're talking about. This person, you don't know what you're talking about. Go and have a little bit of homework. I said to my mum, I'm sorry, but I didn't take your advice for my small business because you didn't have a small business of your own. But then when I talked to small business people and they gave me advice about my business, I was like, oh, that makes sense. And that's because they've been in the ditches doing that themselves, getting themselves up, building their businesses that way. My mother she's a lovely woman and there's nothing wrong with what she tells me, but she works 9-to-5 jobs and she's been smart in all the work she's done, but she's not had her own business where she's had to be the one that risks that. And so because she hasn't done it that way, it means that I can look at that advice, but also see beyond that. She just doesn't want me to fail, but what she's giving me is advice to not succeed either. And then the person who is a business owner who's giving me advice is wanting me to succeed like they did, and they're also wanting me to avoid failure. But the way in which they're talking to me is different to the way my mum is, and that's only because what she knows and what's available in knowledge to her is different from what's in knowledge from them. So often critically thinking about the information that you're receiving. So I'm not saying know everything, and I'm not saying know nothing, because both of those can be just as dangerous as the other. But qualify the information that you're getting. Even me, go and fact check, go and check things out that I'm saying, and learn for yourself. I always encourage people to go and do their own work just to make sure they're getting what they need. The second step in avoiding failure is, one of the things with singing bowls is people would always put their hand, curve it around the sides of the bowl because they didn't want to drop it. Totally understandable, but the singing bowl would only play if it was sitting in the balance, just the hand is kept really nice and flat, and when you play it, you don't try and grip onto it, you don't try to keep hold of it, and it wobbles, but it doesn't fall. It always feels like it's going to fall, but for people who are new, they don't want to be the person who damages it. They don't want to be the person who stuffs up. So what they do is they curve their fingers around the bowl so that they can protect it, except then they don't find they get what they want. They don't create the sound or the vibration, and they're wondering why. And usually, getting them past that step. So if you put that into, when you're out to achieve your own goals, when you try and hold on to something, I'll use the analogy of the child with the seed. When you're telling them that if you put it in the ground, it'll grow. And if then that child goes away and digs up that seed and checks on it every 10 minutes to see if it's going to work, you have to tell them, no, no, no. Put the seed in. Plant it. Give it time. Of course you still need to care for it. Of course you need to come back and water it, give it good sunlight. Of course you're going to have to do all the same steps. But don't be impatient. Don't be holding tightly grip. If you have a great idea and you want to go somewhere with it, please do, but don't be so attached, so clingy to that this is the only way it can work. Most of the businesses that I've started, I've changed them dramatically over a period of time because I go with what the customer is asking for, not necessarily me with my great idea and them not getting it. I came up with a great idea and I want to see them tell me what they need it to do, or what my business needs to restructure to be able to meet the demand that they have. If I want to put on a show or a musical or something like that, I need to do something that people want to come and see. So I need to find out what they want. And sometimes this is the way I'm doing it, and I'm not doing it any other way, and if I can't do it this way, I'm not doing it, that will literally lead you to failure like that. Thirdly, one of the things that I'll see frequently is when people, the main step to play a singing bowl is holding it in the balance and then putting pressure around the side. Now, it may take 3 or 4 turns around the bowl before even the slightest vibration comes up, right? Sometimes straight away, sometimes not. When you try out singing bowls, you'll see what I mean. But with a singing bowl, when you start, one thing that people would do is doubt themselves or doubt the object. So they're starting to play it, and let's say it would take 5 revolutions of the bowl to make the sound and the vibration come up. Well, they'll get to around about the 4th go and stop. And you say, keep going, and they stop, so there's nothing happening. Frequently, in life, there'll be 5 steps to follow, and you've tried all 4 of them, and then you're absolutely certain it's not going to work out. And you fail to take the last step. You study really hard, you do everything you need to do, and at the last minute you go, look, I'm going to go partying because if I don't remember it now, I won't remember, and then you turn up to the test the next day and you're a little bit hazy, a bit all over the place. It's doing everything you need to do and then at the last minute giving up and giving in. quite frequently, the two things that people would often say around this would be, well, it must be broken, or it's the wrong bowl for me, obviously, or about themselves, they'd go, I'm not capable. I can't do it. There must be a magic trick that you have that I don't have. And because of that, it will literally lead them to giving up. And all I would do is just encourage them. Just try again. Just keep going. Keep going. Now are you seeing it? Now are you seeing it? Because it literally sometimes would take, they would see me do it, and someone who's been doing it for many, many years, playing it over and over again, they would be like, oh, he got it in a heartbeat. He got it in 10 seconds. Or they saw the sound and they felt the vibration, but they didn't count how many times I did it. They didn't see me going for a long time or going fast or going slow. They didn't see that. They just saw that something happened, something was done to the bowl, and it made the sound. So quite frequently in life, we will head towards the last step and then surrender because it's obviously not working. If I, put the work and time in now, it should pay off sometime, shouldn't it? No, sometimes you just have to keep going. You just have to keep going that little bit longer. I love the quote. I don't know how true this quote is, but it was something like, they asked Edison, oh, so this light bulb that works is 106 or something like that. And he said, no, I didn't have 106 failures. I had 106 ways to find out how not to make a light bulb. And that has to be the best way of looking at things. When you're out to accomplish any goal, no matter what it is, being too, this is the way it needs to be, and then getting to a point where you go, by this date, I should have it like that. This is the way it should be. I should have 1,000 customers for my new business. I should have 5,000 people subscribed right now to my YouTube channel. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen not because I don't want it to happen. It's not going to happen because something isn't there. It's going to be a goal that I set that I will either meet or not. And often when you don't meet it, you then go, oh, I must be doing something wrong, it's about me, or the market isn't ready for me yet, the world isn't ready for me yet, whatever arena you're in, this thing isn't, there's something wrong with them, or there's something wrong with me. Whenever you hear in your mind saying something like, there's something wrong with, or here, out there or in here, you know that's the thing in the way. Another name I have for this is finishing line syndrome, where you're so close and stop. And lastly, the one thing that I've touched on already, but it's where you see someone else do it and you assume that there's something special about them. You look at people like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, or great leaders that achieved amazing feats in their time, and you go, oh, they're extraordinary. At the end of their life, you can look back at all the great things they did. But then, that in itself, I love that Mr. Rogers, a very famous children's television show host, was nicknamed by many people a saint, a living saint at the time he was around. He refused that title because he preferred not to be called a saint, because it made people think that there was something overly special about him. Anyone can be as nice as him. Anyone can be like that. If you look through history, one of my favourite, I'm a big history fan, you will discover this as we go along. Alfred the Great, the only king of England, the only monarch of England ever to get the title of the Great by historians. He lost during a feast at Christmas. The Vikings raided and attacked and took over everything, and he was without a kingdom. He lived in boggy marshes, and he stayed in a camp where he was told to look after, they say cakes, but I think it was bread, but I'll leave that for other historians to argue. But there was something that was cooking, let's say a cake, and a lady goes away saying, make sure that you keep an eye on that, and he was busy planning his next big attack of how to take the kingdom back, and he didn't pay attention, and he burnt the bread. There are so many stories like that, where you look back and you go, this is a famous person, and then you say, oh, but you must have had it good all the time through. No. Go and do your homework. Alfred the Great, from that day of burning the cakes, went on to not only retake Wessex, which was the kingdom that he owned at the time, he went on to establish the future of what we would eventually call England. And that's still going today, obviously. So kudos to the work and time and energy that he put into making that happen, and subsequent generations that went on to make that kingdom the way it was. But going back, another really great example, and I'm not promoting this at all, as a business, there were these two guys who started an airline that you had a meal and then you had a joy flight, or you had a joy flight and then you had a meal. And these people had a really great name. They called it Amway. Amway today, as many of you would recognize by the name, they ended up failing at that business. And they then went on to sell toothpaste and cleaner to friends and family. And then it evolved into what Amway is today. And for those of you who've never heard of Amway, it's a person-to-person selling, multi-level marketing company. They probably describe themselves differently than what I have, but you can go find out about them if you want. But going back to those two guys came up with a great idea. It sounds like a great idea to me even, but it wasn't right. The customers didn't want it. They either liked the joy flight or they liked the dinner. They might not have liked both together. Who knows? But the two guys came together, started a business, and that's why, for myself, I always wondered why Amway sounded like an airline. That's why. And if we go into like looking through any person that you admire and you want to emulate or you want to surpass, you need to do a bit of homework. One of the things that I do recommend, and it's one of the things that my clients love when they get into it, is when I give homework. So for those of you right now who have like somewhere you want to achieve or you want to get to, have a look at who's already done that. Who has already achieved that? And what did it take for them to get there? How many times did they get rejected? How many times did it take for them to get to where they wanted to be? J.K. Rowling was asked, how do you become a writer? She responded with, start writing and then write some more and write some more. This is echoed by nearly this piece of advice of do that thing that you want to do over and over and over again and just keep going. The number of times where certain people have worked really hard and the one time that made the difference, that took them to that next level, they got recognized for their genius or they got recognized for their brilliance or their amazing qualities. You just got to keep going and you've got to do the thing that you love. But like I say, stop idolizing people like they're this impossible dream. Check out some of your heroes and find out some of the amazing failures that we've all had. If to be human is to make errors. So be prepared. So the whole point of this whole video, to sum it all up, is basically I want you to be aware that before we can even start talking about achieving your long life-term goals or really get into the world of abundance at all, one of the first key places to go looking is what's already stopping me. What do I already know that is in the way of finding out something new? What is it that I'm doing where I'm trying to grip onto things and this is the only way it can be, it must be this way, and getting rid of that? Or even, what steps am I taking that I have like, it has to go this way by this date or I give up? It has to be like an ongoingness to it, right? Like you can't be the best at something in one go. And then finally, look at your legendary heroes and the people who you look up to and admire, or people who've already done the same thing that you're doing, and find out what did they do and how did they go and what got in their way. Because that, I'll be honest with you, that story is much more interesting to me than I did really well and I got to where I am today. Haha. And finally, overall, failure isn't a bad thing. Failure is not achieving something. The biggest failure is not being a success by not doing anything anymore. The number of people who start a business and then stop. The stopping is the failure. The changing, the trying things new, trying different ideas, that is a future success waiting to happen, because if you're willing to keep adjusting and changing and discovering and learning and building from there, you'll find you go really well. For those people who are like, this is the only way I can do things, this is the way that things have to be, and I don't need to know anything more than what I know, you will hit brick walls that will stop you. And if then you give up, the giving up is the hardest thing about all of this. Success does not come when you stop. It will never come unless your success is to be quiet, relaxed, and have nothing to do with your life. That's the only direction that success can go to be successful. If you stop everything and you're unsuccessful and that was the goal, that's the only way. But every other way requires you to keep on going and keep on going. I've had it said a million ways, and in every business conversation I've ever had where someone's talking about how do I become a success in business? Just keep doing what you're doing. It doesn't matter which way you do it. It doesn't matter what you like. If you're selling this and you end up selling that. I started a business in web design that ended up being a web host. I started a business where I was in planning to do like party plans for like 5 or 6 people at different people's homes. I ended up doing it at my house for 3 or 4 people, which made a lot more money and was a lot more successful. I did so many different things where I've learnt firsthand that doing things your way, and that's the only way, and don't listen to anyone else, that's where things fell apart for me and for anyone. So highly recommend that.
Here's a demonstration of a singing bowl so that you can actually see how it works, in case you are curious. Please like and subscribe to this channel, hit that bell for notification button, and follow us on social media, and please leave some comments about where you've had successes and failures, or what you thought of this video.